Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of our 4-day look at the birth narratives in the Bible. The first day we did an overview, and yesterday we talked about the Gospel according to Matthew and his birth narrative, and today we're going to be looking at Luke. Now, whereas Matthew had been very Jewish-centered because his people were Jewish believers, Luke is much more international, and his followers, the people in the Lucan community, they were more steeped, if you will, in Greco-Roman, Hellenistic literature and mythology and outlooks. So we're going to see a difference between these two accounts of Matthew and Luke. One of the differences is that Luke's gospel begins with the conception and the birth of John the Baptist, John the Baptizer, who it turns out is cousins with Jesus. So that takes up much of the first chapter, well, maybe a third of the first chapter. And then when you hit around, that can't be right. That has to be more, isn't it? No, that's right. Then when you get to verse 26, that's where the birth of Jesus is announced. And you have the whole thing of angels not visiting Joseph as they did in Matthew, but angel Gabriel visiting Mary. If Matthew's story focuses on Joseph and the lineage and so forth, leading to Jesus, Luke's gospel focuses on Mary. And so angels appear to Mary. And this is where he tells her, the angel Gabriel tells her that she will bear a son. She says, "How can that be? I'm a virgin." He said, "You'll be impregnated by the Holy Spirit." And she says, "Well, may it be as you have said." And that's where we get the famous words of the Magnificat, which have been told and retold so many times beautifully in music. But anyway, and then Mary goes off to meet her cousin Elizabeth, who's carrying John, and he leaps in her womb at the sound of Mary's voice. So that lays out this whole beginning thing that even before they were born, these two guys were linked by the Holy Spirit. And then we go on to chapter 2, which is the birth of Jesus, the shepherds and the angels. So this is where the angels come and announce the birth to the shepherds first, and they go off to see the baby. And then, they go back. The angels have been singing. The shepherds go to visit. The shepherds go back to work. And then Luke's account goes on to say that how Jesus is named and was presented at the temple and so on. You notice I did not say anything about wise men in terms of Luke. I didn't say anything about following a star in terms of Luke. Those things don't happen in Luke. In fact, there are other differences too. In Matthew, you will remember that Jesus and Mary and Joseph, they went to Egypt and then were brought out of Egypt. And I noted the parallels with Moses. Well, in Luke, they never go to Egypt. After he's delivered, they go back to where they were living in Nazareth. They don't go to Egypt at all. So this is what they're how can I put this? The story that we know, the pageant version, but the story that we know is a blending together. It's a braiding together of these different traditions and these different stories. One that came out of the Matthew's community and the other that came out of Luke's community. And it's wonderful to think of it as one story, but we also need to recognize that there were different focal points, different foci for these two communities. And in terms of the Lucan community, Luke all the way through, and the Gospel of Luke is just the first part of a double work. It's Luke Acts, written by the same person, and the Gospel was Jesus' story up through the resurrection, and then Acts is what happens to the believers in the early church after that. But in Luke's gospel, there's more of a gentleness and a tenderness toward women, toward outsiders, which was also very parallel to how the Greco-Roman world was working at that time too. So you see these really subtle and not so subtle differences between the two gospel accounts when you read them carefully. Most of us know the gospel account of Luke the best, and why do we do that? Because of Charlie Brown Christmas. Because when Linus is standing on the stage with his blanket and he wraps it up around like it's a head piece, and why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Charlie Brown is crying out, and Luke says, "I'll tell you why, Charlie Brown." And then the spotlight comes in on him, and he tells the birth narrative from the gospel according to Luke. And so that's what most of us know, especially in the secular world. People are aware of Luke's gospel story when it comes to Jesus' birth. I hope all of this is adding some sort of interest and deeper appreciation for these stories, because where we are today is we are in a braided together time, a sort of quilted time. I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow when we look at John's birth narrative. I encourage you to read maybe the first chapter of the Gospel according to John, and you might wonder why I call it a birth narrative, but I do, and it is. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor, and I am Pastor Deb Swift of South Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York. God bless. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye for now.